Well, welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining with us. China and Russia have the weapons to target America's most valuable assets, our satellites. In their quest for world dominance, outer space is the next battleground.
Well, the United States has put both countries on notice, announcing that attacks on satellites could provoke a military response. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports on the threat environment in space.
U.S. military and commercial satellites are critical for communication, surveillance, and navigation. And to our adversaries in the space race, they're attractive strategic targets.
Just a couple of months ago, the Russians fired a missile. Now, they shot their own satellite, but they destroyed a satellite that was in orbit. And they did that to demonstrate both to the United States and our allies that they had the capability to take out satellites.
And Russia has threatened to do just that if the U.S. continues to provide critical support and certain weaponry to Ukraine.
So they have ways to do this. They have capabilities to do this. And so the very fact that they said they might consider it is problematic for the United States.
China is also a player. As part of its rapid military modernization effort, focuses on space technology.
China has the means and has had the means for a long time to disable our satellites, either with direct ascent weapons that actually destroy them, with on-orbit capabilities that involved electronic warfare and directed energy.
While the threat environment has increased, experts like Mike Rogers, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, say the U.S. has known about this problem for a long time and is taking action.
One of the reasons the Space Force was created is because to focus on this notion that we are vulnerable in space, the United States is. And so that was a good start.
U.S. defense officials have also recently put Russia and China on notice, announcing that attacks on satellites could warrant a military response.
To defend our country and prevent conflict, we will rely on integrated deterrence. To make it clear to any potential adversary that the risk and the cost of aggression far outweigh any conceivable gains.
The U.S. and Japan recently announced a new space collaboration focused on research, exploration, and mutual defense, a new phase in that alliance that sends a strong message. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Well, I remember way back in the 1960s when you looked at the first moon landings and all of the Apollo programs and the great promise that there could actually be peace in space, that we wouldn't take our weapons there. All of that seems dashed today. And do we need a space force? It seems that we do. In any kind of warfare, you're looking at taking out the other side's satellite communication and the ability that satellites give you to have eyes on any kind of battlefield. So is space being weaponized? Yes. And is it the new arms race? Absolutely. In other news, the Chinese spy balloons surveilling the U.S. not only revealed gaps in our security, it's also shedding light on China's spy program. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, officials revealed the 200-foot-tall balloon had propellers and a rudder, as well as a self-destruct system. Unmanned underwater vehicles are searching for wreckage in a 7-mile debris field off the coast of South Carolina. Researchers are hoping to locate the balloon's technology bay to learn how effective it is at gathering information. A special unit inside the Chinese military controls the balloons. There are reports the Chinese have sent them over more than 40 nations, including 4 times over the United States, apparently avoiding detection until afterwards. President Biden is under fire from members of Congress who say he waited too long to act.
The fact that he did not shoot it down and deal with it immediately upon entry into the United States tells every other adversary, every other country around the world that President Joe Biden will not protect the borders of our country, will not protect the airspace of our country, and that you can do whatever you like. And that's the worst message we can be sending right now.
The president says his military advisors counseled him to wait until the balloon was over the ocean before shooting it down. Now to a domestic threat. Federal agents have charged 2 people in a plot to take the power out at facilities in Maryland and plunge the city of Baltimore into the darkness.
Aiming to, quote, completely destroy this whole city. The accused were not just talking. but taking steps to fulfill their threats and further their extremist goals.
Prosecutors say they sought to use firearms to shoot and disable equipment at several substations on some of the coldest days of winter. The pair, a man and a woman, is described as domestic extremists. The man is an alleged neo-Nazi leader from Florida. The FBI says the two conspired to secure a firearm for the attack, and they have audio tapes detailing the plot. The charges carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. President Joe Biden delivers his State of the Union address tonight. It is his first since Republicans took control of the House. He's expected to make a case for a second term in office. The president's speech comes as he faces a standoff with Republicans over raising the nation's debt ceiling and tough poll numbers. Mark Martin is on this story.
When President Biden gives his State of the Union address, he faces a divided Congress and a large chunk of voters who are not pleased with his job performance. 4 in 10 Americans say they're worse off financially under Biden. That's the most ever recorded in an ABC News Washington Post poll that dates back 37 years. Can the president's speech change that? Nathan Gonzalez, the editor and publisher of Inside Elections, weighed in on CBN's Faith Nation.
I don't know if the speech itself will do that, but if the underlying numbers of the economy continue, I think voters will start to feel the economy getting better, and that will change the perception, but not the speech itself.
The president is said to be very positive ahead of tonight's address.
I talk to the American people and let them know the state of affairs, what's going on.
He's expected to tout a strong economy and claim credit for a better-than-expected jobs report. But Republicans say the American people don't feel any difference.
While the president thinks he has numbers to tout, the average American family knows better, which is why they voted for House Republicans to have a change in leadership in Congress. And we're going to hold this president accountable.
The president will deliver his speech amid a special counsel investigation into his potential mishandling of classified documents. On top of that, you have the threat of recession, Russia's war in Ukraine, and growing tensions with China. And then there's the battle over raising the country's debt ceiling, which Republicans are using to try and rein in more big spending bills.
The runaway spending of the last few years, it's over. No blank checks.
Even the president's own party is apprehensive about him seeking re-election. An Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs research poll shows only 37% of Democrats want Biden to run again. Mark Martin, CBN News.
We turn overseas now to the rescue efforts in Turkey and Syria after the catastrophic 7.8 earthquake and several aftershocks. A massive international rescue and aid effort is underway to help millions of people in the affected region. As Chris Mitchell reports, it is the worst natural disaster to hit the area in nearly a century.
The scenes are apocalyptic. The earthquake toppled thousands of buildings in the area, leaving millions without shelter. The death toll is now in the thousands, but could soar into the tens of thousands. Millions agonizing over lost or missing loved ones.
A whole family of my cousin, his wife, his daughter, and his son, all of them died. They were taken out from under the rubble after 8 hours.
Many are now living in tents.
My wife was terrified after the earthquakes, so we didn't want to go back home. Neither did my kids. Our family came here to stay in the shelter.
The pictures and videos on social media are heart-wrenching. This sister is protecting her brother as they're trapped together underneath the rubble. This father and son died together, with the father protecting his son. This baby was born, and then reportedly its mother died. The anguish of the people devastated has touched a global chord.
I think all of the world's thoughts and condolences are with the people in this region who are suffering at this time.
Dozens of nations, including Mexico, Holland, and Spain, have begun a massive aid effort to bring needed food, shelter, and medical supplies, as well as search and rescue teams to help people dig out of the rubble. USA Team 2 from Los Angeles is one of them.
So these men and women and these dogs of the LA County Fire Department are really going to go place themselves in harm's way to save lives, to dig people out, and to help with the recovery. So it's going to be a very dangerous mission. They're prepared, they're trained.
Israel is sending aid and an IDF team called Olive Branches. They flew out Monday night. And hundreds of volunteers, rescue workers, and NGO members rushed to Istanbul airport to join the effort. The good news is that so far, nearly 8,000 people have been rescued out of the rubble like this little girl. It will now be a race against time to save many more. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Heartbreaking. Thank God for those rescues. Gordon?
It is heartbreaking. The massive earthquake, and then the aftershock was a massive earthquake on its own. So the initial reports, over 5,000 people died, but how many thousands are trapped in those buildings? In many cases, we're dealing with ancient structures. We're dealing with structures made of concrete. In any kind of earthquake, they are prone to fall. But then there's the ongoing crisis of the Syrian civil war, the number of refugees from Syria that were living in that border region, the freezing temperatures, the threat of hypothermia. It's not just a search and rescue, but how do you care for the people that are living in those tents? Well, Operation Blessing is doing something about it. We're sending our international team there right now to assess, and then how do we get our international centers mobilized, just as we did for the Ukrainian refugee crisis? How do we get the teams mobilized to really do serious work on the ground to help the refugees, help those who are now homeless in the middle of winter? We want to be there for them in their time of need, to let them know that God loves them. We love them too, and we want to be there and help them. If you want to join in this effort, it's real simple. All you have to do is pick up a phone and call us. 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can also write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund on the memo line of a check. You can also text to give. Text OBDR, and that stands for Operation Blessing Disaster Relief, OBDR, to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com or ob.org, either one, and those websites will have a place where you can give and help those in need.